And I realized the power of saying yes. The only thing stopping me from doing anything in life was whether I said yes or no.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kristof Lewis podcast. This is a huge day. This is conversation number 50, and I could not be more excited because of that. Thank you so much for your support since day one. 50 conversations is not to be taken lightly, and I will never not be appreciative for all that support. Thank you so much. My guest today is Ashlyn George, and she is a phenomenal person to talk to have this landmark episode. She is a world traveler, and her one thing that stuck with me amongst everything else we talked about is that if you want to do something and you don't think you can do it, you're probably not going to do it. But if you do want to do it, you can definitely find a way, because she has traveled to over 60 countries, and a lot of people think they can't do something like that, but it's feasible, and she shows us how to do that very easily. It's not a problem, only if you make it a problem. I do want to say thank you so much for the support with the website. The website is live now. It's www.kristoflewis.com. There's just a lot of cool stuff you can do there, and a lot of cool stuff I have planned for the future, but you can read a little bit more about me. You can access all the podcasts. You can contact me to be on the podcast, and equally important, you can contact me and we can talk for free about breaking your physical, mental, and career plateau, and really just maybe you're in a rut and you need to talk to somebody else that's like outside of your circle and needs to get a different opinion, and I'll be that guy for you. Absolutely don't mind. Go to the website, fill out the information, get a hold of me, and we will talk. Alright guys, without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis podcast.
Thank you. I am so excited to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
Your conversation number 50, and I could not be more excited. I've been wanting this landstone for clearly a year. I can't believe that I'm finally here. I mean, I'm just 2 conversations short of a year, and it's funny how you were saying, like, you don't understand, and it was so nice for me to hear you say it. You just don't understand how much all the work goes on behind closed doors, when the curtain closes, all the work that goes to build something like this. So thank you. That means so much for, on the reciprocation of that. Like, thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. I think it's amazing what you do, and it's a lot of time and effort, and a lot of people don't always realize the behind the scenes. And with my job too, I understand that. So I appreciate when somebody can get an achievement like that. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And, I'd love to learn more about you. I followed you. I found you on Instagram. I followed you on Instagram. That's how I got to this. But you've done so much traveling. You've been to 60 plus countries and maybe more now. Bunch of continents, 7 continents to be exact from what I've seen. And I just think it's so cool because I talk to so many people that travel, and I traveled to not 60, but maybe, I think it's in the 20s somewhere. So I've been to a couple places, and I've been so fortunate to do that. And I always talk about how I think traveling is very important in instilling a good mindset with ourselves, because I think that if we quarantine to ourselves, or we quarantine ourselves to a region, it kind of limits ourselves mentally. Like, for example, what I mean specifically with that is like getting out and seeing other cultures, interacting with other people and seeing how they do different things. And I think that's very important to help build up your mindset right now.
Absolutely. I am the person I am today because of travel, and I feel like I didn't really understand who I was until I started traveling. So it's been so transformative for me, as cliche as that might be, but traveling really did change my life and my perspective on the world.
Yeah, it really has to. I mean, the more things you expose yourself to, the more things that are going to kind of evolve who you are, because you really are all of these experiences accumulatively. So the more experiences and the more people, the more different kind of people, the more like just crazy experiences that you couldn't just get where you live. So if you push yourself out into these places where you've never seen these people before, I mean, you know just as much as me that people do things, even in other first world countries, people do things so much differently. So even going to a place in Europe or something like that is so much different, and it helps. Like, to me, I know you're in Canada and the States. I haven't been to Canada, but I know that every time I come back to the States, like, I'm very thankful to be here, even when I've gone to another country like that. Do you get that same feeling when you go traveling and you come back? And as much as you love traveling, do you always love coming home?
I do. Home is always comfortable too, right? You have your family, friends, support system. And you come home and you appreciate home in different ways. It opens your eyes to what you have at home. So I always like to tell people a couple of the things I'm really proud of being from Canada about is kind of our natural landscape. I grew up on a grain farm in the middle of Canada in a very small community, and I didn't realize how magical it was at night that I could, step out into the yard, see billions of stars, and watch the northern lights at night. And that was just, it was a common thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize that until I went traveling. And that's just a very little example, but there are no end of those types of examples of how my appreciation for home has grown, and then my appreciation for humanity's differences around the world and how beautiful they are. And sometimes they're uncomfortable, but I think those are those growing moments, right? When you're kind of like, I don't know if I like how this is, but why do I not like it? Is it just because I was raised a different way? It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just different.
Yeah, I love that point, and that kind of backs up exactly what I was saying about experiencing other cultures, because it is just different. And a lot of times people get so set in their ways, and it's, the whole like, I can't deal with change thing. But when you force yourself into those positions and you see how this is just how other people function and this is how they live their lives, and inversely, that if these people came to where you live, they would probably feel the same way. So you have to kind of put yourselves in their shoes as well and see that. But what I think is so cool about you, what I was reading on your website, is that, you were a supposed school teacher, and then now you've turned into this like world traveler. And I think, you're back at home now, and just how does somebody, because I'll back up 1 second, give you a little room for this, is that one of the things I love to talk about in this podcast are people that aren't just, didn't just wind up doing what they're doing now. Like, they've had this other career, or they had all these other choices that they potentially could have gone down this road, but then they maybe leave that behind and make a better or different life for themselves. So how did you go from being this supposed teacher to traveling the world?
That's a very good question. So I went to university. I spent 5 years. I got an English degree. I have an education degree with a specialty in biology. I was very curious about the world. And when I finished that degree that summer, I felt like I wasn't ready to settle down into a classroom. I feel constrained by, a square classroom and students sitting in desks and having to learn based off of a curriculum like that.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like it was the right fit at that moment. So I wanted to chase the sun for a year, and I made it really easy. So 6 months in Canada in the summertime, and then 6 months somewhere hot to escape Canadian winter. And so I decided to go very simple: Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji. Everybody speaks English. I look like I could be Australian potentially, like you fit right in. When I went over on that trip, that's when I realized how much of the world there was. And I realized the power of saying yes. The only thing stopping me from doing anything in life was whether I said yes or no. And then figuring out, if I said yes, how to make those things happen. Huh. And so that's where my love of like adventure activities kind of stemmed from, particularly when I was in New Zealand. And so I decided if I could spend 5 years learning in an institution in a university, I could spend 5 years learning in the world. So I designed a 5-year travel plan that had me traveling for 6 months of the year, every year for 5 years.
That's
incredible. That's kind of how it all started.
And I love it, because I was talking to somebody else the other night about how college and formal education can be really what some people need. And then traveling, getting worldly experience, or like I always talk about self-education and, reading the books that interest you and learning the things that you want to learn, but getting this exposure that you're talking about, which is kind of different than, like you said, being in a classroom and sitting there in a seat, is very important as well. And there's just too many things that you can learn traveling and doing that outside of a classroom that you can't get in a classroom. So I think that's really important to be able to recognize that and know that there's just not one place to learn or one way to learn, and that pretty much anybody can do it. I mean, you you did your school, you picked up and you left. But I know at least when you started, from my readings on your website, again, you said that you were single at the time, so you didn't have a boyfriend or you didn't have, kids or anything. So maybe that makes it easier. But I bet you've got the question like, hey, I have a kid or I have a husband or whoever. Is this still feasible? And what would you say to somebody that wants to travel and wants to like get these worldly experiences, but maybe has some family with them?
I would say 100% is possible. It's all about choices, and if you want to do it, you will make it happen. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean it's going to happen right away, and there's going to be challenges and bumps along the way. But I actually know people who have traveled with their kids, and kids from babies to older kids, and they've traveled with their husbands, and they've even had mortgages and still made it work. So maybe you need to budget a little bit longer or strategize about your trips and where you go. But you can do it. I do recognize my privilege, particularly being a Canadian with a passport that does access a lot of the world. So the world is a little bit more accessible because of my passport too. So I do recognize that there is a certain privilege with that as well. But generally speaking, if you want something bad enough, you just have to go after it and figure out what you need to do to go after it.
And that speaks towards so many other things than not just traveling. So I do love your answer for that reason, because it's applicable to everything. It's just whatever you want to do. If you think you probably can't do it, then more than likely, I hate to break it to you, you probably can't do it. But whether it's traveling or whether you want to start a new career, which I talk about a lot, it's feasible. Like, don't ever think you're locked into this. Like, yeah, if you have a kid or if you have a husband or you think it's going to be more expensive, well, yeah, it's probably going to be hard. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy to go travel, like you said. So I'm glad like you made that point, because it's not all these things that you want to do is just going to be easy, or else everybody would be doing it. But it's definitely feasible. And that's one of the things I noticed in a lot of your writings, is that you talk huge about budgeting, and you make it like really apparent from the start, like, there's ways to do this, and you don't have to have overwhelming amounts of money, but you have to be smart about it. And I read, one of my favorite things is you wrote a list of 20 things that you do, and like how do I travel around the world, because I'm sure you get asked all the time, like I was saying. But what I liked about what you wrote even more specifically is I've read so many blogs and they just go on and on and on. Like I'm trying to like nuke a baked potato in the microwave, and it was like a novel I have to read before I put it in the microwave. I just want to know how long to put it in the microwave. But what I'm saying is, when I read your stuff, it was just like, this is what it is, here are the 20 points, like summary, like boom, like really easy, really short and sweet. So I really like that. So I've already actually put it out on like my Facebook and all this stuff, like, hey, if you want these traveling tips, like go check it out, because this is like short and sweet and to the point. So that's what I really enjoyed about your writing, is that you put it out there, there's no BS, and it's just straight to the point. It's really cool.
Well, thank you. And that's what people want, right? They don't want some long-winded answer. They want to know exactly how you did it, and to be straight up and honest about it. I think a lot of people are nervous talking about money, and I think you can't learn and grow if you don't hear how other people are doing it. Because it is one of the most common questions I get, is how do you afford it? And I kind of laugh sometimes, because particularly when I'm traveling long-term, I spend less money traveling than I do back in Canada.
That's
just
funny.
Because it is expensive to live here, and there are other countries that are cheaper to travel in, while still doing everything I want to do while traveling too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it always boils down to just how bad do you want to do it, or how hard are you willing to work to make it happen? How much are you going to budget? How much are you going to give up? And then I think once you start doing that, you kind of realize like how many things you don't actually need, how many things that you maybe thought was a necessity that you really don't need. Like staying in the hostels, I know, is a huge thing. People are like, oh, I have to stay in a hotel, or I have to maybe Airbnb, which is still a better deal. But especially if you're single, you can stay in a hostel, or if you have a family, I know there's even rooms in hostels that you can get. So there's so many options out there, but being able to access this easy information that's out there and straight shooting right to the point, I think is very helpful for that.
And you're exactly right. And, even hostels, you can still get a private room there, or maybe you share a room for a couple nights and then get a private room. And it depends on your situation, but there's lots of options, and there's more options now than there ever were before too, which is wonderful.
Yeah. And I think it makes it so easy I talk about social media a lot and the ease of just interacting with people. But I have a feeling that having such an internet presence around like global scale, you're talking about traveling all over the world. Like, do you find that maybe helped ease your transition on just going around the world and being able to maybe, because I'm thinking of two things at once here. Like, one of the things is if somebody already has a career, are they able to still maintain that while they're traveling? And my second part was, well, maybe because it's so easy to have internet everywhere, that as long as you have an internet connection, that you can do it abroad. Like, I'll give an example of one of the gentlemen I talked to, Frank. He lives in Colombia, but frankly, he lives pretty much anywhere he wants to because he runs his business as long as he has Wi-Fi. So he just reminds me of you a little bit, because you can pretty much go wherever you want, and you can do everything you need financially just from your phone as long as you have a connection. So I guess my question from that would be, if somebody already has a career or they already have a job that they don't, again, think that they could possibly take on the road, is that something you actually have to give up? Or maybe just temporarily to do it, in little increments. You can go just take a brief hiatus from your job and then go travel. But do you have to give up your career to go do this?
I don't think so. And I think sometimes taking a break to go travel makes you better at what you're doing too, right? You get a little break, you get to learn a little in the world, and you bring that back with you when you come back to your job. And so, yeah, you could ask for a sabbatical. Maybe you group all your holiday time together. And, it might only be 3 weeks a year, but that's still better than nothing. That's almost a month, which isn't too bad to go out traveling. And there's always the options you can quit. And sometimes that's not a bad thing, too. That leaves the door open for new and different opportunities to come along. It's scary, though. But, that's always an option.
And that means you're doing something right. I think anytime that you face that fear, or you get that like scared, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this, that means you probably head it in the right direction. And maybe that's what you need to like rip you out of that career you don't want. Because I am huge about, because myself, like my background, I was in the Navy for 9 years, and I was super apprehensive to get out last year and then pursue a career that I enjoyed to do. And then, this whole podcasting for the last year as well, which is my ultimate goal, is to just do something like this. So that transition was really difficult for me. And that's kind of why I posed that question to you, because it goes all the way back to your first answer to my first question was, if you want to do it, you're going to find a way to do it. So if you want to transition out of a career to a new career, you're going to find a way. And if you have a career that you think is going to inhibit you from traveling the world, and you really want to travel the world, then you probably don't want to travel the world as bad as you think you want to travel. And if you do, you're going to find a way. So I feel like that's like the answer to so many things in our lives. Like, oh, I can't do this, or oh, I can't do that. I can't have this job, or I can't get paid more, or I can't find happiness. Well, you don't find happiness. You don't find the new jobs. Like, create the job for yourself. Like, make it happen. You find the happiness. And it's just, all of these things just stem down to, are you willing to work hard enough to make your dreams come true so that they're no longer dreams?
Totally. And I always say you create your own happiness. And I never depend on somebody else for happiness. I need to go out there and go after it for myself. So that means I need to be making the choices, and they could be long-term choices too, to get me where I need to go. And even that's the nice thing about jobs too, is sometimes you might be able to cut down to part-time while you transition. And particularly for you, right? Like if you want to go podcasting full time, you might still need some supplemental income before you can get it to full time. So if you can either maybe say, I'm going to stick it out for another year, save X amount of dollars, and then transition, or go to part-time if it's possible, right? So there's different options people can look at when they're looking at taking time off to travel.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get scared and they're like, oh my God, I have to quit my job and I have to go all in on my side hustle. Like, I couldn't do that right now, but what I can do is I continue to work my quote-unquote day job, and I can still bust my ass on this. And then, like you said, another good point about like budgeting is like, pinch some pennies and save on the side while you're doing that, so that, yeah, maybe you can actually quit completely at a certain point down the road when you've, pinched all the pennies for all these months. And then, like you said, in a year, but set that goal. And that was what I liked what you said, is like, have this goal of like, in a year, if I will continue to do my day job, if I will continue to do my side hustle, and at the same time continue to like really budget, really focus on those things that I don't need. So again, like, yeah, when you're traveling, you can do it cheaper by budgeting, but even without traveling, if you want to really do something that you want to do, then find a way to do it by, I think a lot of it ties back to money. So like you can't quit your job now because you don't have the money, because this side hustle isn't bringing in the money yet. So again, like budget, there are ways, and there's people that are going to help you. Like if somebody wanted to ask you a question about budgeting specifically, if they couldn't find it on your website, I'm sure if they hit your contact me on your website or your Instagram or something, you'd be like, yeah, this is how you do that. So again, like with social media and the internet everywhere, just ask somebody and don't be afraid to ask for help.
That's exactly it. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life. I'm very independent. I like to figure things out on my own, but sometimes it's just easiest to ask somebody because they can give you an answer right away. They might have the expertise. And you like, there are so many times where I felt so silly going out for coffee with somebody and you know so little about a topic, you almost don't even know where to start with the questions.
Yeah.
But then I'm just honest about it. I'm like, hey, I know absolutely nothing and I don't know where to start, but I'm very curious about this. What can you share with me? And people love to share their knowledge. So go out, buy people coffees, learn what you need to learn, and then build from there and go after it.
That's really cool. And I love that. And that's like part of the reason I really enjoy having this conversation, because I learn things from all of my guests. I learn this mindset, and you know, you have this blaze about you. You're very happy, you know, for people that are just listening and not watching on YouTube. And I can tell that you enjoy what you do and you enjoy life. And I very rarely write things down, but I wrote something out on my whiteboard right here. I want to read it. You posted it not too long ago, and you brought up happiness. Go figure. And this quote is about happiness. You said, I hope, and I think you were quoting somebody else here. You said, I hope you find the kind of happiness that exists on your own terms. I hope you truly take the time to figure out what moves you, what encourages your soul, what you deeply crave from life, and I hope you have the courage to chase that. And I read that the other day, and I was like, I have to bring this up, and I really enjoyed that. I hope you find the kind of happiness that exists on your own terms. And that's kind of goes back to what you were saying about, you know, you're not constantly chasing this happiness. You create your own happiness.
Exactly. You need to do what you want to do to get there. So I look at when I was still in university, I didn't know what my passions and interests were outside of what I was taking in school. Like I played sports and then I would run and, you know, hang out with friends. And then I went traveling and realized outdoor adventure activities and being outside and in the trees, that's what fills my soul up. So now that's what I go after. And some people, they're foodies and they love food and trying new restaurants. And I enjoy that too, but not to the same extent. So it's just different people have different interests. And then you begin to build a community around the things you're most passionate about too, right? So I've connected with people around the world who love hiking and love being outdoors and biking. And now I have this community and support system in the things I'm most passionate about. And so when people are often searching for something, they need to just start trying different things, seeing what they like, seeing what they don't like. It's totally okay to start doing something and be like,
because that's just as good as an answer. Yeah, because you're ruling things out at that point. But I love that. Like I was gonna say the same thing if you did, and I was like, go out there and try things. Like you found out that you absolutely love being outdoors by being outdoors and by traveling around, but you would have never figured that out if you had just been, you know, quarantined yourself to a classroom and felt like, oh, the only way I can learn and the only way I can be happy or successful in life is just to be in this classroom and continue my studies, which is great if you're into that. But like, how would you know these other things if you didn't go out and try it? And if you don't enjoy it, that's totally fine. Like you're not going to enjoy everything, but go out there, test the waters and, you know, see if the water feels right. And if it feels good, you know, stay in a little while and try it out. You might really like it, you know? And it's funny you say that too, because like this podcast, like I've told a lot of people, started inadvertently. Like I didn't really mean to start podcasting. I just like talking to people and I wanted to share the information with other people. So like the way I described it to those that were asking was that you may already be doing what you love to do and what is your calling and may not know it. And I think that's like a really cool point to make, because people are always searching for, you know, again, happiness or what makes them happy or what they're going to pursue in life. And yeah, I've been doing it for a year and I don't have enough money from this to make it my day job, if you will, but I'm still doing it. I still enjoy to do it and I can see it going really big places and I have really big plans for it. But if I didn't have the courage to start it in the first place and I didn't have the courage to be able to record these in hopes to share with other people, then I would have never gotten to this place. And now I'm a year closer. It's so funny. It's like that quote, like a year ago, you wish you would have started. Like look back where you would have been. But I tell you what, nothing rings more true than that cliche saying. Because I look back a year ago when I started, and again, that's why 50 is so cool to me, because I have accomplished so much in that time. And I know that since you got out of the classroom and you started traveling around the country for months and years, and I mean, 60 countries is nuts to me. And being able to do that, but unless you made that decision initially to be like, all right, I'm going to take some time off of, what I'm doing at home. And it's never easy because, yeah, you may have not had a boyfriend or a husband or kids or anything, but you have friends, you have family, and you're leaving behind, like you said, that comfortability of your home. So regardless of what you want to do, I think to do it, you have to give up that comfortability zone that a lot of us get stuck in.
Absolutely. And I resonate so much with what you said about how you often are already doing what you're passionate about, but you just don't realize it yet, or you don't know how to transition it into a career. And you don't always have to turn it into a career if you don't want to either, right? You can always just have it be a hobby or a passion and still have a different day job. But for me, and I didn't realize this until I was probably 27, but I've always been a writer. When I was 3, 4, 5 years old, that's what my mom would buy me, as books and journals, and I would create stories. And this is so silly, but I just thought that's what every kid did. So
That's funny,
what was normal to me wasn't normal to everybody else. And then I went through high school and university, and I lost touch with writing, and I didn't feel like I had anything to write about, right? I wasn't doing anything different or interesting. And then when I started traveling, I wanted to, although I don't teach in a classroom, I teach on my blog.
Absolutely,
and so
you do, yeah.
Teacher, and I'm also a writer. And yeah, it took me until I think I was about 27 years old to be like, oh my gosh, this is what I was meant to do. I'm meant to be a writer. And I had been doing it all along. And I had, there had been an area or a time in my life where I kind of slowed down and didn't do so much writing, but now I'm back at it. And it feels right, and it feels exciting, and it's not easy, and I'm always growing as a writer, but this is truly what I'm meant to do, and I may not do it forever either, right? You can always transition careers, but it's so true that sometimes it's right in front of your face, and you just can't see it, and so I always tell people, ask your friends, say, what do you think my interests are, and see what their opinions are.
That's a really good idea.
Because they can see you differently than how you see yourself. They have that exterior perspective.
Absolutely love that. And I actually haven't thought about that for a long time. I was talking about actually an episode that I released right today, like an hour ago, about writing things down and like just writing things down that you're good at, writing things down that you enjoy, and then kind of like funneling this list down into things that you both enjoy, that you're good at, and potentially you could get paid at to find that thing. But then again, like we've both touched on, you may already be doing it. And I think that's really cool how you brought up, like, I was writing when I was a kid, like 3 or 4, and it takes till like 27 years old to realize that. And it's so cool to me to hear that you're also teaching as well. And I think that we shouldn't be so narrow-minded. Like, just because you want to teach doesn't mean you have to be a teacher. So maybe somebody listening to this, whatever your variable or whatever your thing is, just because you're teaching doesn't mean you have to teach in a classroom. There's so many ways to teach. And again, I just want to bash into people's heads, like, the internet, use it. Like, social media, use it. Everybody just talks all this. I hear actually a lot of negativity about social media, and people are just scrolling mindlessly. Well, no. Social media, and for you too, this is how I reach so many people with this inspiration and with these ideas that we've just shared. So without it, I would not be able to do what I do, and without it, you would not be able to do what you do. But don't be narrow-minded. Don't be tunnel vision to thinking you can only do what you want to do in the way that maybe society has it laid out for you. Like, think outside the box. Like, you are teaching as a blogger through everything that you've done on the global scale. So now you're not like, think about it. This is cool because not only are you only just teaching in a classroom to maybe, 20 to 60 or however many students, depending on your setting, but now literally anybody with an internet connection can read what you're writing, and you're teaching. I mean, I don't know what your analytics are, obviously, but I'm sure it's way more than 20 people in a classroom. So my point is that you can reach, once you start thinking outside the box and thinking about how that your career or what you want to do can affect other people in a different manner, then more than likely you are going to be able to reach even more people than you ever thought imaginable. And I'll say the same thing for myself, because I was having these conversations with people at work, and I was like, wow, I need to capture this. I need to share it with other people. And then like I started learning so much more about social media and the podcasting world. And now I'm reaching like hundreds of people. And it's just like, for me, it's insane. And then that's just on one medium that I can think of off the top of my head. And then on other mediums, it's thousands of people. And I'm like, wow, like for me, like starting it from nothing, reaching thousands of people through the podcast is insane. So I think a couple of key points to take away is like, for you and me, you may already be doing it. So just like think about it. But one of the things I did love you absolutely said before I finish that list is that ask your friends, because they may know you better than you know you in an outside perspective. Like, yes, you know you very well, but your friends see how you go on a day-to-day basis, and maybe you're always bringing up like a topic that excites you. So just pull your friends and family and ask them for their advice, because I think they'd be very helping if they're good friends.
Yeah, they can offer so much insight that you don't always realize, and it's easy to get caught up in your head. And with social media, I agree. The people who I have met around the world and met up with too, has been incredible, and like-minded people with the same interests. Because you can't always, like, I grew up. The town I'm from actually has like 9 people in it, and the town I went to school in has about 1,000. So you're limited with who you can meet and who you can make friends with, and not that they aren't your friends, but there are certain people that you meet immediately, and you're just kindred spirits. You connect, and with social media, you can find more of those people now, and they're all around the world, but you can still keep in touch without having to see each other in person. It's such a beautiful thing.
I really do, and I've described it as beauty. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's so, like, think about Instagram's algorithm. Like, it's so easy. You can just go to the search, and you can find a million other people that like what you like. Like, hold on a second. I know everybody knows what I'm saying right now, but like, never in history has that been possible to find things that you like so quickly in such an abundance. So when we're speaking about other people in our lives, like, if you want to go be a blogger, if you want to go be a world traveler, if you want to go be a podcaster, like, talk to those people, put those people in your circle and learn from them. And then automatically, you are going to learn more from them just by being around them all the time.
And you'll make friends with them too. So you get to be friends and you get to learn from them. And then often you end up collaborating. So it's just like, it's a positive reinforcement cycle.
It's a win-win.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
It's
a win-win, win-win-win. Like, everybody wins. I think with such an attitude like you have, and I just try to be like, there's obviously bad things that happen in our lives, but if it's already happened, then, how am I going to deal with it now is the important part. And none of our lives are perfect, but I think just seeing this glow that you have, and I try to have this glow too, because it affects other people, because you're so chipper, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to be chipper, but I was chipper coming into it because I was pumped for conversation number 50. But having this, and then you're smiling, and other people see it, like, even just walking down the road I've talked about before, people see this, maybe they needed to smile, and that just brightened up their day, something as simple as that. So putting yourself around other people that enjoy doing what you're doing, and then it just grows. And then, like, I'm gonna go talk to my wife after this conversation, like I always do, like I always say, and I'm gonna be like, say how cool it was, and then she's gonna see I'm smiling, and then we're gonna talk about travel and whatever. And I do it every single time, so then I spread that to her, she spreads it to whoever she talks to. So just talk to people that share your passion and do it with a smile on your face.
And it matters. Like, it really, really does. I get a lot of messages from people through social media who do comment about how happy and positive and excited I am about things. And it's partly my personality for sure, but it's also partly because I am genuinely happy with what I'm doing. And that doesn't mean I don't have hard days, and I don't cry about things because it's difficult or it didn't work out. But it just means that even through the failure, I said, this is okay. I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to come out of this and keep going. And then you do. And it's just, it makes it a very fulfilling life too, right? To be working hard for something. And sometimes success is, you're like working and hustling so hard for it, and it doesn't always seem to come, but it's those little wins too, right? It's not always the big things. I find it's a combination of all those little things. And even like that little smile on the street to somebody, or if you're getting groceries, a simple conversation just makes my day.
I'm telling you, it absolutely does. All the little things are not to be discounted. Ashlyn, thank you so much for your time. How can people find you? How can people read your blog?
I am all over the internet, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My blog name is The Lost Girl's Guide to Finding the World. Most of my handles are at the Lost Girls Guide. So if you Google me, I'll pop up. And feel free to send me a DM. I always love to meet new people and chat.
I know, that's a huge part of our conversation there is like go out and talk to people that love doing what you're doing. And if anything, I guarantee you, you will come away loving it even more. Because if something you enjoy, you keep that to yourself, like you're gonna enjoy it and it's gonna be awesome. But if you talk to somebody else about what you enjoy, like you're just gonna really enjoy talking about it even more, and then it's just gonna, like, that fire is gonna burn even brighter.
Life is meant to be shared. I fully believe that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, I'm thrilled that you'd be on here, and for conversation number 50, it was a huge landmark for me. And I'm just very excited, and I'm just going to continue having these conversations, and I can't wait to get to 100, and I'm just really excited for everything that you're doing and all the information that you're sharing. You're teaching on a global scale like never before, and I look forward to sharing your story. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me, and I look forward to listening to number 100 when you get there.
I know, one more year. Well, we'll see if I say well because I'm thinking about maybe changing how often I do them, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But at a minimum, yeah, number 100, I'm coming for you. Don't worry. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.